After filling my stomach with fried rice, I ordered the IU jelly, a sweet and sour gelatinous dish. It was unusual to see this dessert around here, but it was definitely delicious if a little expensive. Since today was a cursed day, I thought it might be just the exorcism I need. Cursed? I guess he's referring to the girl working and also losing money on the stock exchange and being chased by a cop. You've got the money, right? Hey, lady, I hope you know that I'm a high school student. I may look like a high school student dropout, but I actually make good money, and I can support you if you so chose to do so. That's not this type of game at the moment. The woman doubted me after I made an order, because it's expensive, I assume, but of course I had enough money to have a regular meal. You could rent a cheap apartment for 400 mules a month, so I could live on my own pretty easily. The reason I actually couldn't was because there weren't any places a minor with no guarantor could rent. Sorry. I heard that on Earth, people in my situation were sometimes able to make it happen. Unfortunately, lunar cities were only accessible via orbital elevator, and so everyone's identity was known. If I went to rent a house, they'd immediately run my fingerprints and an iris scan, and then contact my parents. Unless you were an extraterrestrial, if you're on the moon, they know who you are and where you came from. Have I ever stiffed you? Just because you've paid in the past doesn't mean that you're sure to pay next time. And anyway, you ran away from home, right? You need to take better care of your money. She's not lecturing me on I should go home or go to school. I felt a strange sense of comfort in the fact that her lecture wasn't about my running. Oh, yeah, that's what I thought too. Running away itself. And overall, I agreed with the idea that people should take care of their money. You don't have to tell me that. Oh, really? The woman shrugged, then carried the IU jelly from the counter where it had just appeared. It was hard to argue with her, since I was, in fact, wasting money here, but I was confident that I had more money than anyone else my age. What's more, I had never gone on a wild spending spree before. The magic of compound interest made the world go round. If 1 mule today turned into 10 in a year, then 3 years after that it'd be 10,000. Compared that to what my dad would make in his entire life, earning roughly the same amount every month from sweating in the fields to growing vegetables. In 5 years, there'd be no way I'd be eating in a lame restaurant like this. That woman might be making fun of me now, but I'll bet I'd eventually be wearing a stylish suit and living in a high-rise apartment in Newton City. And of course, I was not going to stop there. That's right, he has ambitions. That wasn't where my dream ended, it's where it began. If you're some rich actor, you might be able to bask in space on the opposite side of the moon with some beautiful woman by your side. But if you're one of the wealthiest here in this lunar city, you could go even further. You could make all the emotions and desires you feel when you look up at space come true. I ate the sweet and sour clump of IU jelly, and as I looked at my screen to choose a tree that would grow me money, that was weird. I was immersed in a familiar daydream. This place was the forefront of humanity, a golden city of wealth and prosperity. I would run through the city's gates. I'd outwit the geniuses and prodigies from Earth to take my place there at last. I silently got myself worked up during this quiet, early afternoon in a Chinese restaurant. I moved my touch mouse back and forth, and just as I brought up the display for the prominent, even on the moon, investment bank E.J. Rochberg. I'm going to say Rockberg. Customers entered the store. I'm going to be flip-flopping between Rochberg and Rockberg, or Rochberg, whatever I feel like calling it at the time, so you might not see any consistency, and forgive me for that. I thought it was strange that customers would come in at this hour and raise my head. Whoa. At that moment, a feeling ran throughout my body like an ice cube had just stuck up my asshole. Welcome! 2, please. Oh shit. Police officers. Yes, sir. Table for 2. The woman said this in her usual carefree voice, but the words barely entered my ear. I lowered my cap even further over my eyes and hunched over, trying to hide in the reflection of my PC. Looking at their clothes, it was unmistakable. The pair who had just arrived at the table on the other side of the restaurant were police officers on patrol. I'll get the tension on. Same here. Very well, not every well. To tension. It seemed like they just chose this place randomly during their patrol, but who likes eating in the same restaurant as the cops? Not only that, I think those two were the ones that were at the Big Bowl Cafe, according to my faint memory. Awkward coincidence. The patrol route for the police didn't include going into cafes, so somehow someone had to have tipped them off somehow. I was not some sort of invisible man, so someone surely must have seen me hanging around a weird place at a weird time. However that someone was, if they told the police that there was a shady-looking kid around, there'd only be a handful of places they'd search. It was totally possible that those two were looking for me. That might also be the reason that the policeman facing me was glancing at me now and then. Policeman 2. But to think that he'd take off and lead us on this wild goose chase. The policeman with his back to me spoke up. The cop looking at me waited a moment before replying to his partner. Well, it was just some big shots looking at maps all day who decided how wide our area of jurisdiction was to be, and there wasn't any public survey system in that area either. But I think that if I were hiding somewhere, it would have been in that net joint. The storekeeper there was a pretty sketchy looking guy too. Maybe we should grab him and rough him up a little bit. Don't judge by appearance, sis. He ended up having a pretty impressive history, didn't he? Yeah, I guess. Man, I should have studied harder at the academy. I never thought I'd be assigned to the boonies like this. Sorry for my terrible voice acting and such. I'm just gonna read them. Location has nothing to do with it. You just need to carry out your duties. Duties. You're very right about that. So they really were looking for someone. But the owner, that Seralt guy, had an impressive history. I couldn't even begin to imagine. What do we do after this? If we go by the book, we'd start the usual thing with questioning people. His coworker facing me took a sip of water and went quiet as if in thought. I got the feeling that he was taking a good hard look at me. In my mind, I was praying that they gave up on the questioning and went back to their nest. If we call in for reinforcements, we're just going to get laughed at. Looks like we've got no choice. Anyway, our duty is to keep public order. Cracks in public safety begin in the smallest places. Even if it's just one boy, we can't just let him get away. My heart felt like it might jump right out of my mouth. Now, there was no mistake. They were tipped off by someone and were out looking for me. Lunar cities were nuts about keeping public order. Sounds like a terrible place. Even in Red Valley, where suspicious guys wandered around the streets, there was not even the faintest track of any real danger. It was just a degenerate, pleasure-seeking town. Everyone knew just how risky committing an act of physical violence was in a place this small. After all, if you were deported by the residential management court, there'd be no question that you'd never be able to come back. The only people exempt from that form of punishment were people who were born on the moon. Even then, if you so committed second-degree murder or worse, it was not so certain. Of course, so they'll deport you from the moon and send their wicked to Earth. Huh. Earth's like the dump, I guess. I don't know. Of course, it wouldn't be subject to the penal code just because I ran away from home, but the overall zeal for maintaining public order would mean that I'd be sent back home. After that, I'd probably be forced to report to a local facility every day until I became an adult. While that happened, I'd grow further and further away from the front line of the world and would eventually be swallowed up by the masses. I fixed my darting eyes on my hands and thought desperately, how should I escape from here? If I grab my PC and ran, the plug would get in the way. Do I unplug the adapter from my PC, then take off running with just the unit? My identity could be given away by the adapter, but it was still better than being captured. Or should I stay still right here and wait for them to leave? I'd like to do that if it's possible, but that officer staring at me seemed like he was about to stand up and shout, "Hey, you!" to me at any moment. My cold sweat dripped onto my keyboard. Wait, that woman wouldn't have ratted me out, would she? As I thought of this possibility, I was tortured by a desperate rage, but suddenly a shadow appeared on the table. It was that woman. More water? She poured me a refill. I cursed her in my heart, wishing that she wouldn't draw their attention towards me at a time like this, and my lower face was totally flush, but a piece of paper with words written on it was attached to the side of the cup she clunked down on the table. Get ready. Oh? I nearly raised my head, but the woman quickly left my table before I could make the mistake. I set my computer to mute and shut it down so that they didn't notice that my OS was no longer running. I'll give up on the adapter. I quietly pulled the cord out of the main unit and confirmed the location of my bag. I already used the money I always kept in my pocket at the cafe, so I'll use what I had in my back pocket. There was a line in an old Earth Mafia movie that I saw at home that said that a $10 bill kept in your clothes was a business card to God. It certainly kept you well prepared. I quietly placed a 10 mil bill by my hand, perked up my ears, and waited for the right timing. The policeman had been staring at me nonstop. He was definitely suspicious of me. With a clang, the police started to get up. Tension up! At that very moment, the tension gun was placed on the counter loudly. What's wrong? The cop called out to his partner, who was now halfway out of his seat. Is it the guy behind me? Right after he said this, the woman's voice rang energetically throughout the room. Thanks for waiting. Here's your tension gun. Oh, yeah. The one with his back to me turned his attention back to the food. The other one who was looking at me, but because the woman was standing next to his corner seat, he was stuck in his seat and couldn't get out. Now was the moment. It was my only chance. The payment's on the table. I said this as quietly as possible and left the 10 mil bill on the table. Hey, you! Wait! The officer clearly told me to stop, but I just gave him sideways glance as I walked quickly towards the exit. It was only a distance of 3 steps, but it felt like forever. The yelling officer attempted to chase after me, but with the woman in his way, he couldn't get out. Yeah! The shrill scream came from the woman who lost her balance after being pushed by the officer. She turned to the other officer, still sitting in his chair, and the piping hot tension gun looked it was about to spill. Acting out of natural self-defense, the officer caught the bowl in his hand, but by that time I had successfully exited the store. I took off running as if nothing else in the world mattered. Where am I? I spoke to myself out loud to make sure that I wasn't in a dream. My throat was dry, though, so it was hard to speak. I cleared my throat a few times and took a deep breath. I hadn't the foggiest idea how I got here. After I left that store, I ran for my life toward the narrowest street I could find. I thought the police would be right behind me if I looked back, so I did nothing but run forward, not looking back a single time. After that, I must have found a handy-looking tunnel to hide in and then fallen asleep inside it. The pain throughout my body must have been from sleeping in the same position the entire time. Is this a sewer? In general, any place made out of the moon's unique limestone was a public facility. This place also had a cool, rough limestone floor as well as matching walls. Between that and the sound of running water, this place had to be a sewer. Right then, I noticed a slight glow around me. Is that from the exit? It seemed like I was nearly passed out, and while I had no idea how long I'd been asleep, it must be night by now. The fact that the lamps were lit made me certain of it. Slowly and carefully, I began to walk. Suddenly, the road turned into a dead end. I could see the light source on the other side of the wall that I now faced, which was even taller than me. I let out a quick gasp because it looked as though something on the ceiling had moved. But the only things there were strangely wavering lights and shadows. Like a small bug attracted to the light, I took my bag off and climbed the wall. Then, when I saw what was on the other side of the wall, I let out a much bigger gasp. Holy... Before me was a huge, spacious atrium. I was near the top of the atrium and I could see more passages on its bottom, on its opposite and right sides. However, the most amazing part was the waterway passing through the base of the atrium. Clear water flowed through it like gentle rapids. Most of the sound of water must have originated there. The bottom of the reservoir glowed a bluish color. This is a sewer? Occasionally a fish would move. Fish? In the sewers. And its shadow on the ceiling would swim as well. As I gazed at the scene, amazed that places like this existed on the moon, I suddenly heard a rustling sound behind me. Whoa. As I turned back in surprise, I forgot that I was balancing on top of a wall. I immediately lost my balance and fell on my butt. Ow. All of a sudden, I saw a pitch-black figure in front of me, riffling through my bag. Huh? Well, hey, whoa, what are you doing? Not only had my life's wages and labor gone into that PC, but it also carried the billion mool dream that I knew I was going to make a reality. My body moved before I even had time to think, and I tackled the figure. I threw myself at the shadow, covering its face with my left hand and aiming for its throat with my right. Whoa. It was a technique that an immigrant from Earth taught me when I was growing up in a village full of muscleheads. It was an incredibly effective technique, and it had to be. It was used by someone who came from a place where a failed government was replaced by military forces who had seized the UN food supplies to be used as aid and would toss it around as if they were feeding animals. Because I was looking at the light coming from the waterway, my eyes still weren't used to the darkness. The passage was narrow, though, so I couldn't miss. Not only that, but my opponent was way weaker than I had thought, tumbling over as soon as it connected. Right at the moment I saw a small, plank-like object fall onto the floor. The glowing object looked like it could be some sort of computer terminal. However, I was too busy thinking about punishing this idiot who was searching through my bag. On top of the bastard's body, who was either not resisting or too surprised to, I kept my grip on their throat and balled my other hand into the tightest fist I could make. Die! Whoa, this kid's pretty vicious. I froze, my fist still overhead. Hello, girl. I raised my fist and was about to drop my iron hammer of fury. I began to speak. Woman? And that's when you get hit. Right then, my vision went dark. I only realized that I had been punched in the nose after I was woken up by being shoved on the chest into the side wall of the passage. Hitting me out of nowhere? What's wrong with you? The pitch black shadow, or rather the pitch black woman, began to speak. Black hair, black eyes, black clothes, black skirt, and black shoes. Her ankles, peeking out from the hem of her skirt, were black too. Even her stockings were black. Dressed in black from top to bottom, her white face seemed to float in the darkness. She stared at me with her thin, black eyes as if she was staring at a bug. My head was seething, both from the shock of being punched and my anger at the outrageous situation. What the hell? You're the one who's going through my bag? What's wrong with you? That's not true. What would you do if this broke? The girl looked around then. While still sitting, she reached out her arms and grabbed the plank-like device that fell earlier. She brushed away the dirt and began to use it properly to see if it still worked. But anyway, what kind of mentality would lead someone to verbally attack me after hitting me? This is why I hated women. I'm just doing this because I was asked to. Why do I have to be subjected to this? She seemed to mutter this to herself. Disheveled from the fall, she gathered her long black hair into a bundle of darkness in one hand and straightened it neatly in an instant. It looked like a cable harness. Found him. Hurry up and get here. I'm in the side passage on the top level. Still seated, the girl began to talk. That thing might also work as a communication device. Who in the world is she? Was she searching for me, or was she interested in what I was carrying? If that were the case, then I wouldn't hold back. Thankfully, I was in a dark, deserted, and hard-to-see place. I might have lost the fight just now, but if I went at her with all my strength, I knew I could win. Maybe I should take some naked pictures of her. Maybe I should take some naked pictures of her and post them online once I was done. That was an absolute, unnecessary, illegal lewd act to be mentioned in a game. Or visual novel, I think. I'm actually quite against that. With that in mind, her arrogant attitude and expression might come in handy. Right as I went to move my back off the wall, I heard a voice. I hear you. Wait 1 minute. The floors get complicated around there. As soon as I heard the voice, I felt the dark urge in my chest disappear. I had heard that voice before. It was the voice of the woman from the Chinese version who allowed me to escape. Hurry up, Lisa. The girl spoke curtly into the terminal. I feel like I'm losing brain cells just being around this guy. Oh, excuse me. I was dumbfounded for a moment and then glared at the girl. Huh? The girl glanced at me, then quickly turned away. She acted as if she had heard a stray dog barking outside her window. She was clearly acting in the intolerable way that only women can. This guy is quite prejudice, making it seem as though the insult or abuse hurled her way would possibly affect her. While I was the type to get really angry when something I say is ignored, I was not even enough of an adult to suppress my irritation. I kept glaring at her, not caring how lame I might be looking. Still glaring at her, I pulled my bag towards me and made sure that nothing had been taken out. Nothing seemed wrong, only there seemed to be something like a piece of dried macaroni at the bottom of my bag. It was partially metallic and a small, green, rice-sized light was flickering on and on. Huh, a tracking device. Around the time that I figured out that it was a homing device, much like one you'd use on a pet dog, I heard footsteps from the other side of the passage. The woman who appeared shortly after was unmistakably the one from the Chinese restaurant. While she was irritating, she also saved me. So this was Lisa. Phew, finally found you. I told you reception is bad around here. The girl in black replied. But I found you. It took a little while though. The woman wiped her forehead, which made her finally realize that her hair was in a mess. I'm amazed that you got all the way to a place like this. Were you here the whole time? While the woman talked, she took the flat device from the sitting girl. After inputting a few commands, the macaroni-shaped light in my hand stopped blinking and turned yellow. Is this a tracking device? Not answering the woman's question, I asked one back. Yep. I put it there when you were busy bending over to plug your adapter in. You were busy being charmed by my legs, so it was so easy. I wasn't charmed by anything. I shot back. This only caused the seated black-clad girl to shoot me a disdainful look over her shoulder. Well, I apologize for putting a homing device in your bag without asking. No matter what the reason, it isn't a nice thing to have happen to you. Her easily offered apology left me no room to complain. Only there was no way that someone will put a tracking device in someone's bag could be an upstanding person. Considering this, I started to feel like her saving me at the restaurant might have been due to some ulterior motive. In any case, I was in the back corner of a deserted sewer. What I had just thought of doing in my rage to the annoying girl in black might now be done to me. You see, geniuses and the rich were gathered in the lunar cities, and most of them could be called extremely talented. However, they often said that the line between brilliance and madness was paper thin. There was no shortage of stories along the lines of mad scientists performing unspeakable experiments on a nightly basis, or of wealthy perverts committing sickening acts one after the other. I looked up at the woman, the shaking of reflection from the water dimly reflecting upon her face, and grabbed my bag with one hand. I was careful enough to spread my money across the different pockets, so of course I carried at least a small weapon. But regardless of gender, the woman over there was taller than me. Gravity was weak on the moon, so if you thought about it as simple action-reaction, there wasn't much difference here between a man and a woman's punch and kicks. In that case, it came down to either wrestling or stiffening your body in one place and slamming it into your opponent while conserving as much physical energy as possible. That was where the length of your limbs made a difference. Not only that, there was someone right next to me who most certainly wasn't on my side. I recalled the atrium I had just looked into. With my leg strength, couldn't I jump over the wall all the way over to the other side? Or if I made sure to land in the water, wouldn't I be okay? While my mind was whirring through the possibilities, I gulped and said the following. Why are you doing this? Was your saving me a trap? I wasn't sure if I should say that much, but before I could make a decision, the woman spoke first. The woman smiled as if she was stumped and bent her head to the side, and she then continued, For fun? Excuse me? My back stiffened with a shudder. I had the feeling that I was going to be killed. You've got to be kidding me. I still had dreams. I had just barely gotten to the starting line. I stood up and suddenly put all my strength into my thigh muscles. She spoke right as my body began to fly up. But I mean, you wouldn't want to get falsely arrested, right? Unable to drain all the strength on my thighs, my body floated as I hopped slightly backwards. Sorry. Hold on. Coming back. I'm coming back. Unable to drain all the strength in my thighs, my body floated as I hopped lightly backwards. With a slow, gentle trajectory, my back tapped against the wall. Wait. Wrongly arrested? That's right, those two officers were chasing after a boy, aged 15 to 17, height around 160 centimeters, slender, black hair, black eyes, Asian features, wearing a black backpack. But isn't that him? The girl in black replied to this description. That's what I thought, too, but after talking to them some more, I realized that it was someone else. I was slightly confused. When did I get asked that? That woman had known for a long time that I was a runaway. I'd been going in and out of that restaurant for a while and had met her a number of times. Running away from home as a minor was technically against the law. While it was not something you'd be punished for, it was assumed that public order would be deteriorated by jobless, penniless minors wandering the streets, and so they're cracked down on. That's why the woman's words didn't make any sense to me. Confused with my back still against the wall, I heard the woman let out a small sigh and continue to talk. Those two officers weren't looking for just some runaway kid. They were after a thief. Thief? That's right. But well, considering his MO and the circumstances, I could see how someone like you could be suspect. Hearing this, I was reminded of how persistent the woman was when it came to the most random things, and that's why you wouldn't stop asking me whether or not I had lunch. Exactly. The other day, someone stiffed a nearby restaurant on the bill. According to eyewitnesses, the suspect looked just like you, as usual, but well, I didn't think that someone would rather order you with a carefree, satisfied expression on his face right after gobbling up a crab fried rice would do something like that, you know? The woman giggled as she said this. Slightly miffed, I glared back at her. I wouldn't do something dirty like that over something like 10 mules. Of course not. I checked with Sarat too. Oh. And I made sure to hold on to your change and your adapter. That made me feel a little relieved. The adapter was especially important. If you were smart enough, you could do just about anything with an electric appliance, so most purchases required showing personal identification. If my adapter were to get returned to the police as a lost article, they'd figure out my identity in a snap. I heard that on Earth, even a child could anonymously buy parts that could easily be made into a cutting-edge weapon. Cutting-edge missile. Now that was a scary place. Geez, what happened to the Earth? So, well, that's what's going on. You should come back to my place. I honestly could not understand what she was saying. What? Are you thinking of going back to that cafe? I asked Sarat, and he said that 4 stern-looking guys are taking turns patrolling the place. It was not a result that I was hard to predict. Only if that's the case, then I'd be back sleeping on the hard ground of some deserted area. To be honest, doing that took a big toll on my body. Not being able to get a calm night's sleep was the worst part about this police patrol. As far as getting sleep, the Big Bull Cafe had roof and running water, and if you said that you wanted to pay the premium fee, you'd get the sense of security that came with knowing that you'd be alerted if something dangerous started to go down. The question was whether or not that's a reason to just jump on an invitation from suspicious woman who put tracking devices in people's bags for fun. Even in stock trading, a too-good-to-be-true balance sheet was sometimes used to prime the pump right before a huge crash. I understand why you might be suspicious, but I just told you, right? It's like a hobby for me. I don't get this, girl. The woman told me this as I remained doubtful. Bringing runaways like me into your home was your hobby? She's either a pervert with some bizarre hobbies, or could it be my charm? Sorry. I think I basically know what you're thinking, but the woman then laughed in amazement. Unfortunately for you, boys younger than me aren't my thing. Unless they're holding giant, blood-soaked scissors. Excuse me? Oh, well then what? What are you after? Is it money? As soon as I said these words, the smile disappeared from the woman's eyes. Did she get mad just from that? While I had the feeling that I had already said a lot of other things that should have not been made her angry, I was still surprised at the sudden change. Watching my face, the woman just must have realized the change in her own expression. Oh. Well, I'm sorry. She spoke in a forced tone, then rubbed the area around her eyes gently with both hands. This completely disarmed and confused me. Not only that, I was faced with the grim reality of not having any place to go. The woman in front of me allowed me to escape from the restaurant, so in that sense I owed her a lot. I then concluded that aside from the part about being a runaway, I did consider myself a decent human being, so I should probably reply with something like this. If I do end up being a burden on you, I won't be able to pay much, you know. While I had realized that she wasn't especially interested in my money, I still had enough decency to feel bad about not paying someone who took care of me. That's why I said what I said, but would she understand? As I kept staring at the woman, she finally grinned and nodded. Of course, I'll take a little for food and other costs, but it should still be a lot better than wandering around outside. Oh, and, the woman continued, after all, I took care of Sarat too. Huh? Nothing you should worry about, so what will you do? There's nothing else I could do. There was only one way I could answer. Thanks. You should be more honest and just say that from the beginning. The woman continued to smile as she said that, but I told her in my head to be more reasonable. Okay, then let's go back. If it gets much later, I won't have a good excuse to give to the police. Hearing the word please, I nodded, once again recognizing the precarious situation I was in. However, while both the woman and I tried to set off, there was someone who wouldn't budge an inch. It was a girl dressed in black. While I wasn't sure if she was listening to my conversation with the woman or not, she had an absent-minded look on her face. "What are you doing?" the woman asked. It was a very pertinent question. The girl, still not answering, turned her head and stared my way. Her utterly conceited expression immediately reminded me of the irritating argument I just had with her. "What?" I said this to her with a voice full of anger, and I knew that my remark would be ignored or snubbed, but she was going to be upsetting but she was being so upsetting that it just came out that way. As I expected, the girl then turned away snootily with all the annoying elegance of some sort of princess. "Hagana, you're not trying to throw a tantrum like some child, are you?" The woman used the name Hagana to refer to the girl. Still snootily turned away, the girl called Hagana gave no reply. With this, I was roughly able to guess what was going on. The woman inviting me to her house most likely meant that I would be living under the same roof as this obnoxious girl named Hagana. Naturally, I was upset that I'd been openly rejected by her, but taking a step back, I suppose I could understand how Hagana felt. This put me at a bit of a loss. Should I get angry or should I respond like an adult? Only this wasn't the time or place to dawdle, as I was about to say that I didn't mind even sleeping in the garden. She spoke first. "I can't stand up." "What?" Hagana looked up at the woman, replied to her, and continued, "I can't put any strength to my hips. It's because he tackled me." Hagana looked at me as she said this. The woman looked at me. "You tackled her?" "Really?" I vaguely recalled something like this happening in kindergarten or elementary school. Teacher so-and-so tackled some or another. But I was not one to use violence without a reason. If the girl in black looked over in the response to a sound and saw someone searching through her own bag, she wouldn't have done the same thing. Right as I went to say this, I'm faced with the fact that I tackled a delicate girl and began to realize that I had done something that was hard to make an excuse for. Women were such unfair creatures. I cursed the black-clad and white-skinned Hagana as a shrewd tactician. "I guess so." "Wait, no, but, well, I can imagine the situation. In that case, in a fight, both parties are to blame." The woman said this, then pointed at Hagana. Hagana looked at the tip of the finger as if it were covered in some kind of sweet syrup. "If you can't walk, then have him carry you on his back." The woman pointed her finger towards me. Of course. Still attracted by the finger, Hagana's gaze shifted to me. "Wait, how is that punishment for both of us? That doesn't make sense." While I protested, the woman raised her eyebrows ever so slightly as if to insist that I listen to her. This was blatant favoritism, I thought. After all, the person that she's saying has to be carried must also. I began to think, then realized, in a fight, both parties were to blame. Okay. Hurry up if you understand. This wasn't just any ordinary woman. Hagana also made a face as though she had come to some sort of realization, then nodded. I sighed, put my bag on my front side, and walked up towards Hagana. She was sitting down, so her face was in somewhat erotic position. This kid. Puberty must be hitting him pretty hard to be thinking of this kind of thing at all times. Naked girl, pictures, erotic positioning. Hagana hadn't made particularly expressive faces to begin with and stared up at me emotionlessly. Sadistic desires began to well up in me, thinking that I'd feel a lot better if I slapped the side of her face as hard as I could. However, I felt as though if I dwelt on those thoughts for too long, I might actually slap her. So I quickly crouched down and turned my back to her. Perverted, anger-issued little young man with a lot of narcissism. No, not narcissism. Very egocentric and a lot of ambition. I don't like this main character so far. I wasn't sure how long it'd take, but living under the same roof as her seemed like it'd be a pain. At least until the friction between us settled down, I should avoid any potential points of conflict. Come on, Hagana, turn your arms. That's right. I tried to give Hagana, who seemed to be telling the truth about not being able to stand, a hand in climbing on my back. Hagana's thin arms wrapped around my neck, then stiffened awkwardly. Actually, it seemed like this girl had never climbed on someone's back. Hagana, you're not going to be dangling from his neck. You're going to get on his back. The woman explained, and after a bit of silence, Hagana shifted her body onto my back. Finally, two small but soft objects touched my back. As I was responsible for carrying her, I wrapped my hands around the bottom of Hagana's thighs. I was filled with the strange thought. So this is what legs and stockings felt like. Shit! It's not that bad.